Okay, welcome. Hello, hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening. It's Adina here from the Immigrant Finance Podcast. I am recording our 100th episode of the Immigrant Finance Podcast. Oh my gosh, I couldn't even say it straight because this is such a big moment, and I'm like so nervous to even be at this point and be talking about it and the journey that's gone into this. So, the 100th episode of the Immigrant Finance Podcast. We are here. We made it together. Thank you, all of you who have been listening throughout, and to our new listeners for taking the time to come listen and be part of this community. It means so much to me. It's been such an honor and such a pleasure to be starting this podcast. We're about to hit the 1 year mark of when we started the podcast in December 2020, and the height of the pandemic. Really crazy time in the world. And here we are at episode 100. So I wanted to do just what I think will be quick. Talk about what goes into getting to episode 100 and the 1 year mark for those of you who are thinking of starting your own podcast or who are interested in starting a podcast. Before I started one, thought it was this huge deal to start a podcast. And in many ways it is, mostly mindset related, as I'll go into. But the actual logistics of it, super simple. You can start a podcast in one day. It can all be free. You can self-publish your podcast. You don't need permission from anyone to do it. So I'll go over the tech kind of quickly. So you can use a platform such as Anchor. That's what we use. There's many other free platforms out there where you can upload the recording and it will distribute it to multiple platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Does it all for free and publishes. You can also edit in there. You can make the actual recording also on a free platform. You could use Zoom recording. You can use Zencaster. I'm using Zencaster right now. It's free. You can use the voice notes on an iPhone. There's lots of ways. There's Loom, lots and lots of ways to record for free. So it's actually not a big lift to start a podcast. Anyone can do it. And if you are all interested, I would really encourage you to, because it's such a powerful way to share your voice, to connect with your audience, to explore a topic, to become an expert on a topic, and to really get out there and share what you have to say. So let me talk about what's been the hardest part. The hardest part of starting a podcast was not finding the topic, although I know that can be really difficult when you're first starting out. If you get to a point where you have a topic, there's something you're passionate about that you want to share, right? You're gonna know it, and that can be a journey in itself. But when you have an idea of what you want to talk about, that's not so much the hard part, because that can often come from your purpose and what lights you up and all that. It's not the tech. I just went over the tech. You can set up in a day. It's all free. And I'm listing things that are hard, but I'm gonna tell you why they're not the hardest. The tech, although it's, as I said, it's easy and you can set it up in a day and all that, it's still new tech to figure out. It was still intimidating when I did it and overwhelming. So it's still challenging, but it's not the hardest part. The hardest part is also not telling your friends and your family. That was also challenging. I still feel shy when I tell some friends and family that I have a podcast. It's embarrassing in some ways. I think particularly as a woman, we're kind of trained from a young age to not share our voice too much, to be kind of quiet, right? And so to say, oh, I have a podcast, really means you're declaring that you have something to say and something to share with people. So that is challenging as well, to actually tell people you have a podcast, but still not the most challenging thing. Next, the most challenging thing of starting a podcast is not telling your work colleagues, although that also is really, really scary. That took me quite a long time to tell some of my close work colleagues about the fact that I have a podcast. Also felt super embarrassed about it. They were really supportive, but that took a lot of courage and time to get to a point where I felt comfortable telling them, but still not the hardest part. You know what the hardest part is of starting a podcast and making it to episode 100 and 1 year? It's finding your voice. This is the hardest part of starting a podcast. Not the tech, not the telling other people, not figuring out what to say exactly or what you want to talk about. All of those things can be overcome. What is the most challenging, again, is finding your voice and then deciding to share it. Now, when I started looking into podcasts and learning about them, I was told by a mentor that the secret to a successful podcast is making it to episode 60, because there's a saying in the podcast world that you're really just finding your voice until episode 60. And until then, it's kind of going to suck. Like you don't know what you're doing. You're nervous, right? And you're figuring it out as you go. So the goal is really to make it to episode 60 when you're going to be a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more on your feet. So that was the first really, really big milestone when we made it to episode 60. And I remember when we got to episode 60, like feeling like I had climbed a mountain because I had just been trying to hold on to get it to that point, even though it was really scary. And I just want to say it's not like the scariness of finding and sharing your voice then goes away when you get there. It's still, for me at least, has continued to be just as intimidating. I just have more experience now under my belt of showing up consistently and not giving up, and showing up, when I'm in the mood to record a podcast, and sometimes showing up when I'm not in the mood to record a podcast, and when I'm feeling insecure or not in a great place, and continuing to show up week after week to really commit and devote myself to making the best podcast that I am able to do at this time, and sharing my voice and what I have to say. So that has been very difficult. The most difficult thing about having a podcast, and it's very real. And I want to go into the vulnerabilities of this because at this point we have several students in our business coaching program, Illuminate Digital, who are thinking of starting podcasts or in the process of starting podcasts. And I want them and others to know the kind of those challenges that people don't talk about, beyond the tech, beyond the telling people about the fact that you have a podcast. It's having a platform where you say what you think. And that is really can be really scary, but it's also incredibly empowering. And it's an amazing journey of self-discovery to allow yourself to explore that despite all of the uncertainty and fear that come with sharing your voice. As I think of making it clear, like I'm still nervous when I record. I don't mention this in every episode, but I want to kind of peel back the curtain and give some more behind the scenes here on episode 100. I still feel nervous all the time. I still, when I try to go live at the same time or record on video when I can, so that we can get the content up in other platforms like YouTube and, be able to go live and all that. I still almost every time I'm like, well, maybe not this one. Maybe this one, it makes sense just to do audio. And then I have to catch myself and be like, okay, you're making excuses because you're afraid to show your voice and you're afraid to show yourself, and show up because there's people who deserve that from you, for you to show up and provide whatever insights you can provide in case it can be helpful. So that kind of goes to what has allowed me to keep showing up despite how difficult it is to find my voice and share my voice, and what I want to share with you all in case this could be something to give you the strength to go ahead and start that podcast or to keep showing up if you've started one. And what that comes down to is that I keep recording and I keep showing up and I keep doing this because despite all the fears, despite the insecurities, despite the doubts, despite the, potential judgment and rejection that can come when you share your voice more, I know somewhere in the very bottom of my heart, in the very bottom of my soul, I know that there's a reason I need to speak, that there's a reason I need to share my message and what I'm learning, that others, deserve to have access to that information too, and that I want it to benefit from other people besides myself and my family. And I know that no matter how hard it is, I have to keep showing up and sharing my message and sharing what I'm learning, because there could be one person it helps. And so that is a big takeaway I think I've found with having a podcast and continuing to show up, not always knowing if people are listening, not always knowing if it's making a difference, is to focus on that one person who you could be helping. And I think about that one person. That's something I've been doing for the past, I would say actually more recently, the past month or so, is I really, when I sit down to record, I think of this one person who I could potentially be helping, who could get one nugget or one gem out of my conversation in that episode that could make a difference for them, or help them rethink things, or help them see life in a different way, or help them question their assumptions or their beliefs about money and their potential in business. And that's why I show up. That's why it's worth it, despite how challenging it may be for me. And this is the same kind of lesson and message that I really promote and teach our students who are starting businesses, particularly online businesses, is that at the end of the day, it's not about you. It's about them. It's about the people who need you. It's about the people who you are meant to help. And I was actually having a group coaching session this morning with our Illuminate Digital business coaching students, and talking them through this. And it's something I'm repeating over and over, that you are here for a reason. You were born for a reason, and you have had all of the experiences that you've had in your life for a reason, so that you can make a difference and make an impact in other people's lives. I truly believe that for everybody, no matter what your background is, what your circumstances are. I believe that everybody has something to share with others that can help others. And a lot of the journey is about figuring out what exactly that is and how exactly you can help people. And a podcast is an amazing way to do that, because it really gives you the space to go in depth and explore a topic, to discuss that topic with others through having guest speakers on your podcast, and interviewing them, and giving you just the time and space to develop, your own thoughts and insights on this topic for the benefit of others who are listening. And podcasts have really democratized the ability to share your voice. It used to be, in order to share your voice, you had to get a book deal or a record deal or some kind of contract from a big company that controlled access to information and the sharing of people's voices. We are no longer in that situation with the internet and with podcasts and with social media and with online business. We are at a point, we're at a huge turning point in human evolution where anybody can share their voice. I went over in the beginning about how you can set up a podcast in one day for free and start sharing your voice with others and sharing what you think. And this is a huge deal. This is a major shift in humanity. And it allows us to be sharing what we're meant to share with others, even if we're not quite sure what that is ourselves. Because again, there can be that one gem you say that makes a difference in one person's life. If the whole podcast, is a failure and no one listens, or maybe some people listen and don't get anything out of it, but there's one person who gets one thing out of it in one episode, then it's worth it. It's worth it because that's part of your sole purpose. That's part of what you're meant to do. So, as I was telling our business coaching students this morning, all these fears and doubts that come up whether you're starting a business and getting the word out there about what you're doing and talking to people, or starting a podcast, whatever it is, those fears and doubts are actually normal and expected. And it happens because you're going outside of your comfort zone. Anytime you're going outside your comfort zone, that means you're growing. And when you do that, your brain tends to freak out, because our brains are designed to keep us safe and keep us where we are. This is an evolutionary thing that comes from back when we were, trying to survive in the wild and lions were running after us, and our brains were designed to keep us from getting eaten by that lion or keep us from jumping off the cliff. It's that same structure of the brain that tries to keep us safe when we're doing something that's a good risk, that's going outside our comfort zone. Our brain just tries to keep us safe and keep us where we are. So that's why when you do something like start a podcast and share your voice, those same fears come up of wanting to keep you safe. And it's just expected and it's normal. And so when you start to understand that that's what's going on and that's why you feel that way, you start to get your power back because you start to realize, okay, even though this is happening and even though my brain is freaking out, I have the power and ability to make a choice to continue going forward anyway and step into my potential and step into what I'm meant to do because it could potentially help others and make a difference. And this is part of my purpose. So this is why I keep showing up, even though a lot of the times I'm terrified. You all probably don't know that. Now you know, is because of I believe it is part of my purpose is to explore this topic and share what I have learned in my own family with my husband who's an immigrant. I'm navigating the financial system, of sharing what I know as an immigration lawyer and my understanding of the financial system and how it relates to the immigration system and all of the people I have met and connected with and worked with who are struggling in this area who I can help. This is why I keep showing up because they deserve it. And I ultimately have to remember it's about them and not me. And so my fears and my insecurities about showing up and recording are nothing compared to the challenges people are going through in this area. And so that's why I keep showing up. And this is ultimately what podcast did for me. When my husband and Mao immigrated here in 2013, and we were really struggling with finances, and there was nothing we could find in any of the finance books or any of the blogs or any of the podcasts about finances for immigrants and immigrant families. I turned to podcasts for support. There's nothing, like I said, there was nothing on this topic of finances for immigrants and their family members, but there were relevant podcasts on finances. And I pretty much went through a self education journey. I feel like I got a master's degree of financial education, life education through all the podcasts I obsessively listened to. And that's what got me through that really challenging period when we felt so alone, when we didn't know what to do. We didn't know how to get out of our situation. We were completely stuck. If you want to hear more about this, just listen to the very first episode created 1 year ago, episode 1 about our immigrant finance story. And you can hear more about what challenges we were going through exactly. But podcasts were there for me, and I listened to them all the time, and it helped guide me. And so it is such a gift that they gave. And if I can begin, to even provide 1% of help to others that I receive from listening to podcasts, that would make it all worth it. So these are the things I think about when I wake up and it's the day where I'm supposed to record a podcast and I'm feeling super insecure, I'm feeling tired, or I want to just be lazy and I don't want to do it and I'm having resistance. I think of these things. I think of what podcasts did for me. I think of the people who deserve, to hear what I meant to share. I think of that one person who might benefit and why it's worth it, even if I don't feel like doing it. And I also think about how important it is to be consistent and keep showing up. That's another really important thing with getting to episode 100. If you want to start a podcast, is consistency. And this is something I tell our business students all the time in Illuminate Digital with like posting on social media even. I would rather you post once a week, every week consistently, than go do like 10 posts and then drop off and stop posting for several weeks or something, because consistency is so important. It helps build trust. It helps your audience know that you're someone they can rely on, that you're someone they can count on, that you're going to keep showing up no matter how hard it gets, no matter the fears that come up. You're going to keep showing up because you've made a commitment, and it's a devotion, right? So that is also part of getting to episode 100 in 1 year, is no matter how hard it gets and the fears and the insecurities, to just keep showing up because of how important consistency is. Um, during this whole year of starting a podcast, I've also just learned so much about podcasting and online business. It's been such a journey. I'm so, so grateful for the opportunity. It has completely changed my life. Most importantly, I've been able to really connect with amazing people by having a podcast, whether it's our listeners who reach out and I get to talk to and hear about their experiences and get to support them or just listen, to all of the incredible guests that we've had who've come on and shared their stories. I'm so grateful for our many guests who have each shared their immigration story or their connection to immigration issues and help normalize this topic and normalize talking about immigration stories. We've had multiple guest speakers who've actually talked about publicly family members getting deported and really hard things that aren't widely talked about, and then talked about the strength they've had and how they have survived and how they are now doing things to help others and make a difference, whether it's starting an online business or a platform or a nonprofit or a movement. We have just had so many incredible guests from the immigrant community and from allies of the immigrant community come on. So I'm incredibly grateful for their time and their energy. I've also just learned a lot about online business through the podcasting journey. Since we started 1 year ago, we have now gone through the trademark process, the copyright process to really build up the intellectual property of what we've been creating in this community. We have continued to grow our Immigrant Finance School program, which is our signature live group coaching program for immigrants and their families who are building generational wealth, where we teach people how to manage money, invest, and increase income, including start online businesses. We also restructured that program and went from a 6-week program to now a 1 year program with live monthly group coaching. And that has just been really, really transformational to see the impact it has had on our students to have more space and time to process what they're learning and really dive in deeper on mindset issues and building community and support. We also this year launched Illuminate Digital, which is our second program, which is a more deep dive advanced online business Accelerator program. And we actually rebranded it recently to be called Illuminate Digital. It used to be called Immigrant Finance Business School. That's now in the second group after we just launched it about, let's see, how many months ago? Uh, I think it started in March 2021. So yeah, it's been less than a year for that. And just so many changes have been happening. Our team has been growing. We have an amazing team at Immigrant Finance who have been building this community and building these resources for our audience. We've got some incredible virtual assistants who have been helping create content in Spanish on our social media. You can check out the social media page. We're building Finanzas de Inmigrantes if you want to see some of our content in Spanish. And we also have the Immigrant Finance School course that is in Spanish available for pre-sale right now. You can learn more about that as well at finanzasdeinmigrantes.com. And just keep an eye out for the podcast to keep growing. I have no idea what direction it's going to be going in, but it's been such an amazing journey. I've also been able to just learn a lot more about this topic of finances for immigrants by having this opportunity to dive in and teach and provide trainings through the podcast, explore topics more in depth. So definitely check out prior episodes. There's a ton of valuable information out there and so many valuable lessons from our guest speakers as well. Some of the next episodes you'll hear, I'm going to be recording from Ecuador, which I'm very, very excited about. Our family is going back to Ecuador for a month to visit Mao's family there and my in-laws and spend time with them. So that's going to be really, really exciting to record from there. And we'll just see where things keep going. So I want to wrap up with thanking you all so much for your support. If you're listening now, we really, really appreciate it. and just giving us the opportunity to shed more light on this very important topic of financial empowerment for immigrants and their families. It has been the journey of a lifetime. I really never thought I would start a podcast. You can hear in episode 1 when I talk about how I started it, really based on kind of a dare from a mentor of mine, and how scared I was. You can hear my voice shaking in the first episode. So it's just incredible that we've made it this far together. For those of you who've been listening from the beginning, I just thank you so much. You are what make our community possible and allow us to keep doing this work. And we are so, so grateful for you. So thank you. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And here's to many more episodes together. If you ever want to come on and share some of your story or discuss this topic, we'd love to have you on. Take care and have a great rest of your day. Thanks.